Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast.
And I'm Jessica Bun Bun.
Welcome to our reaction and review for The White Lotus Season 3, Episode 3. Hopefully, you guys are all done putting on your Cobra shows and are ready to get into everything that transpired. Some interesting revelations this week.
I love you, Rick. Thank you for releasing all the snakes. I know it didn't work out exactly like you thought, but I was feeling the same thing.
Yeah,
That poor iguana that was just like, oh.
I
I was like,
know.
oh, you need to release these snakes. They're all sitting in a box that's got
I,
Cobra written on the side of it.
yes.
I felt so bad for them.
It gave me this really visceral memory of I grew up in Texas, and the State Fair of Texas happens in Dallas, and I would go there almost every other year or whatever, some interval like that. But there would always be these animals that you could go and see that are like, come see this special horse, see how small they are, or something like that. And they always give you some kind of gimmick, but I always just felt terrible and guilty for all of those animals. And I have never believed in a Walton Goggins character quite like I believed in Rick in that moment. Don't get me wrong, I love watching Walton, but I cannot relate to Boyd Crowder. I'm pretty sure I cannot relate to the ghoul from Fallout either, but finally, Walton, me and you are connecting.
It was just such a powerful scene. We don't know everything that's going on with him. We just do know that he is filled with sadness
Yeah.
and anger, and seemingly he is a man that feels like he is trapped in an aquarium and he just needs to let everybody out.
No, there's so much to talk about with Rick, and I think all of his storylines were very effective
Yep.
and interesting. And then there's the moment, of course, where poor Chelsea ends up becoming an innocent bystander.
Absolutely, but she is really like standing by him no matter what. Oh, you released all these snakes and it
Yeah,
bit me in the leg and I almost died. I still love you.
everyone out there needs to find, I guess, their Chelsea to their
Right.
Rick, who will be there for them no matter what. I mean, who knows what's really going on with those two? But we're going to, of course, talk more about Rick and Chelsea, but then also Belinda, Greg, everything we are learning about them.
I know. I mean, I know she's going to be able to unravel this, but how long is it really going to take?
We will get into all of it. Before we do, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And thank you guys so much to everyone who has been subscribing for Jess's 50th birthday. That was this past Friday, getting us
Yeah.
closer to 70,000.
We are really close to
Yeah.
70,000. We really appreciate it. We've been doing this a really long time, and to be so close to this milestone, I mean, it means a lot to us. And also, if you want to support us further,
Mhm.
you can follow us over on our Patreon. We'll have a link for you below in the description. We are
Yeah.
covering over there exclusively The Pit, which is airing on Max,
Mhm.
and Prime Target, which is airing on Apple TV Plus. It is the only place that you can get those reviews weekly. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys. We really, really appreciate that.
I am also really appreciating this Rick and Chelsea story.
Yeah.
There's something really wonderful and in some ways wholesome about this story. I know that it's a younger girl with a rich guy, and he even made like a comment about it. Oh, you'll find some other rich guy to
Mhm.
attach yourself to. And there is darkness that's going on here as well. But there's something else that is going on here with these two. Last week we had this like really tender bedroom scene, which
Mhm.
didn't seem like it would have fit in if it was just like, oh, she's just there for the money. She's
Mhm.
not really treating him like that. He's not really treating her like she's just sort of this fun plaything. There's something that's deeper here with these two. I think that after everything with the snake and she sat down, she's just like, I am your soulmate. I'm going to follow you through life after
Mhm.
life after life. You can't get rid of me. There's something that is much deeper going on here.
I think it speaks a lot to two things. I think Mike White, for whatever reason, I think he's really tapped into what he wants us to get out of this relationship, which is questions as to why they're together, of course, but
Mhm.
how they met, how Rick has been able to navigate this relationship without presumably telling her everything about what he's really doing. But then also, I mean, we know, of course, that Walton can alternate between these really sort of aggressive roles, but
Mhm.
also being very tender and charming.
Yes.
Like, I
Yes.
was not super familiar with Amy Lou Wood coming into this show. Like, I know she's done some other stuff. I just haven't really seen it. But for whatever reason, she's been able to find something in playing Chelsea that has made this dynamic feel interesting and genuine when I think in a different actress's hands, this relationship would probably just feel really icky and strange and not comfortable to watch.
Yeah, these two together have made this feel very genuine, that this is not just about the money, that there is something that is a little bit
Mhm,
deeper here between them, but it feels like this block that Rick has of what happened to his father or what has happened to him in his life or where he is in his life, that he is just unable to give himself fully to her. He probably doesn't trust it.
mhm.
Yeah, she's a lot younger than him. He may be very jaded in life of all the things that have happened to him, and he's really closed off. I think that they can get there. They said that he's a Scorpio, and Scorpios are very passionate. So I mean, he can get there. They're very emotional.
And as a Libra, I just want to cry for you guys and hope that it all ends up working because we are very, very emotional. But I will put on my tinfoil hat here on
Yes.
Rick because I'm trying to psychoanalyze this guy and a little bit of what's going on with
Hmm.
him. And there's been so much reiteration about how he's very damaged, how he's done some really, really bad things. And it seems like he blames a lot of this on his upbringing and the fact that he never really got to know his father. And
Hmm.
a lot of how he is acting is because of this just desire that if I had had a different path, it would have been different. So I need to avenge whatever happened to me. And that's why I've had this theory that,
Hmm.
okay, we know that Sritala or Sita, see, I'm working on pronunciation. This episode tried to help me a lot, but she is going off to Bangkok. That's presumably where this mysterious Jim guy is. And
Hmm.
I think Jim had to do something with what happened to Rick's father, and that this is going to be Rick's way of getting vengeance. I also think that Rick may have taken out some other people in the past, whether he's been hired to do it, whether he just found himself having to do it. I mean, yeah, it goes back to the I don't know if I can go to Australia thing in the premiere, but there's something about his past. It's obviously really, really shrouded in darkness. And so I'm kind of leaning towards this, but I think Chelsea knows that that's not really who he is. She might not know everything about him, but she sees, I think, his heart. She sees his soul, and she
Hmm.
wants to find a way to bring that out of him, even to the point where she's willing to entertain these ideas because it was his idea to go to this snake showcase before it was even hers. And she was just gung ho for it because I think she just wants to see him believing in something.
I just don't want to see Rick just being a killer or a killer for hire. And
No, I
that's
get
sort
that.
of his background. It feels kind of like it'll just cheapen it a little bit. It does feel like there's something more to him from his upbringing to sort of leave him as this empty vessel. That I just love revenge stories. So the
Hmm.
idea that, yeah, maybe he's done some bad things in his past, maybe not murder, but maybe it takes something like this where it's
Hmm.
like, oh, here's the man that might have been behind killing my father, robbed me of this childhood or adulthood or life with a father that I
Yeah.
could have had, but he took it from me. That if I can just square that away, then maybe I can just like put that in my past. I can move forward and I can open up with this woman who clearly really loves me a
Yeah.
lot. She's put up with a lot from me. She just got bit by a snake and she's still by my side, being like,
Yes.
you can't get rid of me, Rick. I am here with you for the long haul through all our lives. That it seems like he really does want to get to the other side of this. And that story to me feels very rich.
I think the big idea, well, one of many big ideas that this season is kind of dancing around is this idea of emotions motivating actions and what that says about a person. Because this whole snake sequence, as comedic as it was to watch Walton go full tilt, I'm saving everybody, it was also a reminder it's like, okay, deep down, this is a guy who wants to do good for the world. He
Right.
wants to let these snakes go because he thinks that what's happening to them is really, really bad. Obviously, he's not thinking of the consequence of what's going to happen to Chelsea, but I think that's a real reminder that, okay, something is in him that's very, very good. So, hypothetically, even if he is on this tour of vengeance, and he ends up meeting this Jim character. And even if he does feel like this Jim character is somehow responsible for what happened to his father, like, is he going to do the darkest thing possible, or is he going to then give in to a better impulse of just finding a way to move forward where eye for an eye? Is that actually going to make it better?
Let's go revenge Rick. You can do
Okay.
this. You can take care of this. And then you and Chelsea can go off and live happily ever after. If this man murdered your father, you get your revenge.
I will say this.
Bring the snakes.
He just bring the snakes. Okay, that would actually be that would be a very entertaining outcome. I need for him to get better, because the idea of him having to do more dinners with Gary slash Greg, I was trying to
Oh
think
my
in my head,
goodness.
okay, what's the worst thing I could possibly do when I'm on vacation? It feels like hanging out with that guy is pretty high on the list. He does not seem happy at all.
I do not want to go on vacations and hang out with other people on the resort. I'm not into it. I've been on a few vacations where, yeah, there's other people around, you see them and hello is fine, but
Yeah.
like I'm not interested. I'm here with either my family or my friends or whoever, and that is what I am interested in.
Yeah, I was trying to think back while I was watching this. Have I ever done this? I think the most I've ever done with somebody on vacation is when I do a group activity because the people running the establishment want you to do it. It's different than, hey, let's dine with these strangers.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Rick and, Greg, I know he's Gary slash Greg, but we'll just call him Greg because
Yeah.
that is who he actually is. But neither of these men want to be here. And
No.
at this point, it just kind of feels like, why don't the women just hang out then? They don't have, their boyfriends don't have to get along.
No.
They're only here for a short period of time. So just let that go. You ladies go and enjoy yourselves. The men don't have to hang out.
No, and I think what's great about that dinner sequence is that I think, other than maybe Chelsea, who just wants to be with Rick, every
Yeah.
single person there seemingly would rather be somewhere else, because we're seeing whatever this is between Chloe now and Saxon, where Chloe knows that Saxon sucks, and yet still she's like,
Entertaining it.
yeah, you know what? You're probably still better than Gary at this point, so let's go with that.
Let's talk about Belinda finally
Yes.
figuring out the connection with Greg, and
Mhm.
that she's like, finally goes up to him, is like, I know you, I've seen you. Greg, right? No, Gary. You didn't even change your name to something that's like way different. Hey, are you Greg? No, actually I'm Frank, or I'm anybody else. Like, it was such a close name that it's still sticking with her. She's the fact that she mentioned Tanya. I mean, it was so nice to hear her name.
I
I mean,
know.
I miss her from the show, but it's still a great season without her on the show. I was actually going into the season being like, is that just going to be missing too much for me? And
Yeah.
while I miss her, it is not taking away from the show that she is not there. But the fact that her name was mentioned, I kind of wondered if Chloe was going to pick up on the name
Hmm.
and start to question things a little bit. I don't know how much Greg has told her, but he's told her enough that he's made up this lie that
Yeah.
he's like, oh yeah, this happened, and she just walked into the ocean and that was it for her, sort of thing. So the fact that he would have never even just mentioned her first name feels like he would have. So when that came up, I was like, oh man, is this going to turn into a conversation later where Chloe's going to be like, okay, this woman kind of has your name pretty close and also mentioned Tanya, so let's talk about it. But also, those two don't feel like they have that kind of relationship. It feels a lot like Chloe is just there for the money.
Yeah, this is a very financial based relationship.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm kind of wondering, okay, has he told her some things about Tanya? And even if he has said the name Tanya, like, is it something that she's really that interested in looking into, because it's just so long as she's happy,
Yep.
she's willing to go with it? I'm gonna try to piece together a little bit of the timeline with all of this stuff, because
Okay.
there's a few things that are a little confusing to me.
Okay.
So obviously, all this happens in Maui, where Belinda thinks she's gonna have this dream come true, and that's once again another example of, was Tanya doing everything she was doing for Belinda because she cared for Belinda, or was she just doing it for herself to feel good? It might be a lot of that, but I think it still showed that, okay, she's at least capable of thinking about doing something nice for other
Yeah,
person,
she is.
regardless of whether or not the motivation is fully there. But I think one of the biggest reasons why this is all sticking with Belinda so much is that, yeah, I think she blames Tanya for getting her hopes up, obviously, but she also knows that it wasn't until Greg showed up that all of a sudden this entire dream went away.
Mhm.
So what was said behind closed doors, she might think on some level, okay, did Greg push her further out of this? So she's built up probably all these thoughts about Greg, and which is explaining perfectly why she would never forget that face if she feels that betrayed. But then there is this other part of it, and we've talked about this a little bit in our other review, is
Mhm.
just how is it that it doesn't seem like Belinda knows anything about what happened to Tanya?
Yeah, I mentioned this in the review as well too, that I used to work at a resort,
Yeah,
and I did for many years every summer, and all the resorts that are all connected know everything that's
yeah.
going on with everybody. So if something like that happened with Tanya, everyone would know about it. So it's interesting to me that she does not know about it. She has not heard about it. She has no idea that this has happened.
The only thing, and this is the only thing I've come up with in my brain to kind of justify this, and I don't even know if it's justifiable, is this idea that they know it happened, but then the hotel and the surrounding community just tried to cover it up the best of their ability to try to not get it out there because it's going to make them all look bad. So they all have to kind of keep it on the down low. But that's still,
The staff talks.
yeah, that's still the really hard thing about it, is that the staff doesn't really have any motivation to really go along with that, because you're gonna
No.
gossip, especially in a world like this where there's so much like income inequality, where you want to sort of talk about these rich people doing ridiculous things. It kind of gets you through the day, right?
100%. The staff talks, they all talk to each other. And in this day and age, with communication being as easy it is to be able to kind of talk through the different resorts, it just feels like that information would definitely have gotten back to Belinda. It was such a huge thing that happened.
Yeah.
I just don't know how she doesn't know about it, honestly.
Yeah, and the other thing that sticks with me too is just the idea that Tanya was this potential benefactor. And
Yes.
a lot of times, if you're somebody who you thought something was going to work out for you because of this person and you didn't, I think it's a natural curiosity. Occasionally, you might look them up and just see kind of what they're doing. Like, I don't,
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that's just an impulse a lot of us have.
Yeah.
So that part of it's always going to kind of stick with me and bug me a little bit. I'll get over it, obviously, but it's a weird decision that they made.
I am curious to know how she's gonna actually be able to like have that aha moment where it's like,
Mm,
okay, Greg Gary is lying to me. I was right about it.
yeah.
Like, it's one thing to be really sure about it and then have somebody like lying straight to your face and denying it straight to your
Mhm.
face to be like, I don't know you. Sorry. Like, what are you gonna say to that? At that point, you do kind of question yourself and be like, did am I right? Do I know this person? Maybe I'm not right. Maybe it is somebody who just looks like another person. They were very specific to say, oh, there's a bunch of older, white, balding
Yeah.
gentlemen here. So, oh, we all look the same kind of thing. I'm not who you think I am.
I feel like, once again, recurring theme, emotional impulse. I don't think Belinda is the sort of person who's just going to be like, oh, I was wrong. I'm going to go back to getting my massages
No.
and having my teacher kind of sort of hit on me. And I'm just going to have this be the rest of my trip. I think what's going to happen is she's going to sit on this. And then maybe in the next episode or the episode after that, she's going to push a little bit further. She's going to make more connections. And then the problem there just becomes, do I speak out about it because I'm a guest at this hotel and not a guest in the way that other people are guests? Or is anyone actually going to believe me if I bring something up and I don't have any proof of anything?
Well, this might be where, what you were talking about, the idea of like, oh, this really big thing could have happened for me where I could have started my own spa, but then this guy came in, that you would kind of look that up. And people
Yeah.
do that a lot. Not everybody, but that at this point, where she's kind of like, you know what? I haven't heard about Tanya in a while. This guy here looks a lot like Greg. He's denying it. Maybe I'll just look him up and see what happens. oh no, she's dead. And that's where it might start to come together.
Yeah, I think you're right. It just feels like Belinda's the sort of person who, I mean, her job is caring for other people. And
Right.
even if she doesn't feel like doing that all the time, I think she is somebody who is naturally curious and wants the
Yeah.
most for other people, that she'll
Right.
do a little bit of digging, but then have to try to figure out what goes from there. And it's just not really a who done it, but it's a how do you solve it? And that's an interesting story in its own right.
Absolutely.
Okay, there's a lot potentially that could go into that and what we saw at the start of the season, but if we're to talk still about who's causing that incident at the start of the season, there's still other directions we can look, including the Ratliff family, where we now have Timothy Ratliff's new solution to all of his problems is, let's just throw all our phones in the bag, hope it all goes away.
Take
And
some pills and sleep it off.
he has a very interesting vacation now where he is just going to try to sleep through this whole
Yeah.
week and not think about anything.
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to work, but I think eventually there's probably somebody who could even show up here.
Yeah, I was wondering if somebody, they've mentioned Terry a bunch of times, who seems to be someone who's a connect with everyone.
Yeah.
I feel like with what's going on and how serious it's getting, that somebody's going to end up on a plane to come out there and just be like, why aren't you answering your phones?
Yeah, this feels like a solution for a day or two, but I feel pretty confident. Not only do they know that they were going on vacation, they probably know where Timothy was going on vacation, because
For sure.
he's leading seemingly a bunch of people, all with like some sort of big objective. And if there are a lot of people who feel wronged by him in some way, like we already heard the voice of Kenny on this past episode, and if he was going to do something to help Kenny and then he doesn't and reneges on that for whatever reason, maybe Kenny hires some people, and then that's what happened at the start of this season.
Okay, let's talk about that robbery that happened in the last episode.
Yeah.
So we saw a lot of people in the comments were thinking that Mook might be behind it. She might have had her hand in there. You talked a little bit about Guy Talk that
Yeah.
maybe he had his hand in there, and now this episode makes me feel like it's confirmed that he has his hand in there. So sort of the sequence of events is we've seen he's really interested in Mook, and she was talking to some of the bodyguards, and then he was kind of like, oh, well, what about me, kind of thing. She's like, oh, you're fun or whatever. But she's talking to the bodyguards, and then all of a sudden we have this robbery that's happened where he gets hit in his head, but he's so brave, and he's being praised for being brave and trying his best and everything that happened. And then he asked for a job being one of the bodyguards, and then he's trying to talk up Mook again. So I was kind of like, okay, it feels like maybe he set this up so that this robbery would happen, but that he tried to stop it and maybe get a job as one of the bodyguards so that he can impress her.
I think I was way off base with my theories about him last week, because I did think that he was involved, but I was going down this big elaborate sort of trail of, oh, he's some sort of secret informant for all these really bad people, and he's helping all these organizations. Now I'm just sitting here being like, one, I think you're right, and two, it kind of makes sense because Mike White does like to do these really offbeat, emotional, and relationship based stories. And I think having it be just an issue of Guy Talk is somebody who is very, very insecure, clearly, about himself and his lot in life, but he also does feel like he really wants to find something with Mook, that there's something here with Mook. I mean, it is really risky to try to do these various things to get this promotion to bodyguard, but it does feel possible if you are desperate enough. Like, one thing I did find out and kind of just hearing people talk about the show a lot over the past week or so is apparently the actor who plays Guy Talk actually has been a bodyguard in the past, and he is one of these people who is from the cheaty school of I'm secretly jacked. You just can't,
Right.
you just can't tell it from watching the show, and it's just like that. It's an interesting thing. I'm just watching to see how much bodyguarding I guess we see from him moving forward.
Like Sterling K. Brown over on Paradise. Woo!
know.
Like episode 2 or something. He took off his clothes. I was like, oh my goodness, what is happening here?
I am very invested now in Guy Talk, even if he's not
I am
exactly
too.
what he seems. But it's once again, I think, a really good case of casting, because you look at that guy and he just looks really genuine, and he looks really
Yes.
sweet, and that
Yeah.
he could have kind of this other sort of motivation behind everything where he might be doing it for the benefit of the love, but it's still, there's just
Yes.
this shadiness that's going on here too.
Yeah, I think he's a guy who has the right motivation. He is a bit insecure. He's trying to like show that he's worth more, and this is how he's able to do it. He's setting up a show, smoke and mirrors, to be
Yeah.
like, look, I am brave. Look, I can be a bodyguard. Look, I am, more than just my post, so that he can get the better position, so he can get the girl.
Okay, I'm gonna try to do a quick little ranking of certain stories on the White Lotus in my brain right now.
Hmm.
And I think number one, Rick and Chelsea. They're so weird. I'm so into them. I don't really understand it.
Yeah.
Number two, everything going on with Belinda. I think number three at this point, I might be saying guy talk. I might be saying
Yeah.
watching Timothy sleep and whatever's gonna happen to him.
No, I'm like the least interested, I think, in what is going on with the family right now. I think I'm more interested in what is going on with the three friends. And I think they're still pushing forward in this very relatable story of when you have been friends with somebody a
Yeah.
really long time, and those relationships are starting to splinter into different directions. And even though you've been friends for so long and you feel like you should be friends forever, that when your life goes in different directions, that it pulls you apart, and there's nothing really happened in the friendship. It's not that you don't like that person anymore. It's just you're over here and they're over here, and it just doesn't work out anymore, and that's okay. But when is it time to actually just pull the plug on it and be like, you know what, we're just in different directions. It's okay to let it fizzle out.
I am very fascinated with these characters. I'm also just sitting here and being like, okay, let's start to let things boil over with these three. Like, I want to see something
Mhm.
a little bit crazier happen. And I know Mike White doesn't really work that way. I mean,
No, you're watching the White Lotus.
I know.
Crazy is not it.
No, you got to wait until close to the finale to see what happened with Armand, which, by the way, Armand mentioned in this episode, rest
Yes.
in peace, you
Yes.
sweet,
Oh.
disgusting prince. But I do really think that what's happening a lot with these three women is that, clearly Lori, Jacqueline, and Kate, they all went into this with these like expectations of who they thought each other was going to be.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of, you think that somebody is still stuck in time from when you guys were really, really close.
Yes.
And it feels like with Kate in particular, these other two women are just sort of like, oh, we don't have any other way to explain these changes in behavior. So we're just going to blame the guy that she's with. And we're just going to
Right.
say, oh, he's the one behind doing everything. And it feels like that is just sort of a total cop out way for them to look at it. They don't want to actually do any sort of serious introspection. I think if these three are ever going to, I guess, fix whatever this relationship is, they probably have to do that. But if I'm totally honest, I don't know if I'm really watching this story to see them be fixed. I want to see them have these big revelations and realize how different they all are, and then really start to hash it out in a very entertaining way.
Yeah, I think it's just really difficult because yeah, these women have known each other their whole lives, decades on decades, but then it's like you can make the choice to either sort of go your separate ways or actually get to know the person they are now, and that's a really difficult road to go down because you already have these preconceived notions of who they are. You already took the time to get to know them years back, so that taking the time to now get to know them again, and they're on a different road than you that doesn't match up, it's like, okay, then is the juice worth the squeeze at this point, or is it time to just let it go?
Yeah, they're gonna have to figure this out. I hope that it happens before the finale so we can kind of see a little bit of what that fallout is. And
Yeah.
in general, I'm just excited now about the prospect of, okay, a lot of these storylines have been kind of sort of individualized, where they've come together briefly here and there. Like briefly Belinda intersects with Rick and Chelsea, but moving forward, we hear about this boat party that seems to be
Oh
happening,
no.
and it seems as though Saxon has found himself a way to get in on this boat party.
Hmm.
So we now potentially have this Ratliff story intersecting with everything that's going on there, and then Gary slash Greg, and then you're throwing in Rick and Chelsea. I think we're about to be at the point where this season is really playing with gas. Like this episode, it had a few, I think, really, really fun, exciting moments. I know Belinda having the revelations was really great.
Yeah.
There's just also a couple of things I am sitting here and being like, okay, I want these to just move a little bit faster. Like, can we get the three friends going a little bit faster? Do I need to watch Timothy take yet another pill?
Yeah, things with the three friends and the family felt like they hadn't really progressed into anything.
No, like the most we have here is the daughter Piper going and just setting an appointment
Mhm.
to have the conversation, not having the conversation, but setting the appointment. And I think the only thing that came across really interesting to me there was, oh, you're doing this thing for a year? It seems like you told your family that this was just like something for a paper or something to that degree. So you're really trying to piece out on your family.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was hoping it was going with this story. I mean, it feels like the family is, while they're all here on vacation, they are all on their own roads. Nobody's really together. Even when Tim's like, oh, we'll all put our phones in the bag for these other reasons, they still are not coming together. Nobody knows what anybody else is doing.
No, and they're all so obsessed with themselves. I don't know if they'll ever be able to figure it out.
Right.
I just feel so excited about the rest of this season. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, there are some questions I have, there
Mhm.
are some leaps in logic I
Yep.
question.
Yep.
I still do think though that this is the most fun I've had with the White Lotus season at this point. There's more characters I like in season 2 there was just a ton of people I didn't like and that made it tough at times.
Yeah, I really enjoyed season one. Season two was more difficult for me because I just didn't like anybody. So I was having a really hard time connecting with anybody or even just like getting deeper into their stories. And I mean, I do like shows where I don't like anybody. I love Succession. Everybody on that show was terrible, but for some reason, season two, I had a harder time with. But season three, so far, I know we're only so many episodes in, but it is my favorite.
Let's hope it keeps all of that
It's the
up.
Walton Goggins effect.
Anything he's in, it just gets better.
Yeah, it does.
We're going to let Rick go and free some more animals. But for now, let us know, what do you think is going on with him? Do you think Belinda's going to piece everything together? Share your thoughts, your theories in the comments, and also hit that subscribe button. Help us get to 70,000 subscribers. Also, if you just want to check out another fun show, we covered this weekend 9 Bodies in a Mexican Morgue on MGM Plus. It's a little bit under the radar. It's a really fun show, though. We highly suggest you check that out.
Yeah, it's really good.
Also, if you want to support us further, be sure to join our Patreon. We have a link in the description below, and we're covering exclusively there in video form The Pit on Max, Prime Target on Apple TV Plus. Thank you guys so much.
Thank
We
you.
will see you here next time.